Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00 and the return of the Classified Materials series. The old hands here will know what this one's all about, but for the new people among you, the Classified Materials series is where we go through classified material from the Office of Naval Intelligence, and the most substantial example of compiled classified materials, at the moment at least, just happens to be Dr. Catherine Halsey's journal. So this series endeavours to go through every single dated entry that Dr. Halsey put into her journal and extrapolate on it and talk about the law, things going on in the background, and Halsey's state of mind at the time. I've been looking forward to getting back into this one, so with nothing more left to say, I'll hand you over to the younger Dr. Halsey, dated September 23rd, 2517. Doctor, if you would.
Phase 1 of Indoctrination underway. We're attempting to tell the candidates why they were taken, why their mission is critical for the fate of all humanity. Some already comprehend the magnitude of their task. One boy, a 6-year-old, actually asked me if they were here to save everybody from fighting and killing each other. Most only understand pieces. All of them miss their fathers and mothers. My team of ONI child psychologists assures me that after 6 months under Mendez's tutelage, they won't even remember their names, much less their families. ONI grossly underestimates the candidates. Typical. Working with Deja to continue the indoctrination protocols and education to ensure willing compliance. We are asking everything of them. They deserve as much truth as we can stomach to tell them.
This is a great entry because it also highlights the morally grey nature of Dr. Catherine Halsey. In some of the more recent books, Dr. Halsey is being written and portrayed in such a way as to suggest she's the fall guy for the Office of Naval Intelligence and is just the evil mad scientist. Yet her wording here speaks volumes to her empathy and sympathy towards the children and the horrors that lay in front of them. It also speaks to her unflinching faith in the Spartans' capabilities and ONI's consistent ability to underestimate them.
Do not underestimate them. But most of all, do not underestimate him.
Even the last part of this entry highlights that she can only stomach to tell them so much of the truth. Let's be honest, as 6-year-old kids, if you were suddenly sat down in a room told that you're going to be the saviours of humanity, but then you're also told the gruesome truth of the reality that most of you probably wouldn't survive to actually get into the battlefield, you'd be killed by horrific and highly invasive surgical augmentations when you're 14 years of age, wouldn't have necessarily bred trust and strength of resolve. This entry, interestingly, coincides with the exact day that the Spartan 2 candidates were first introduced to the Spartan program, when Halsey gave them their quote-unquote inductance speech. Prior to this, there were 150 candidates that were identified as being perfect with their psychological and genetic markers for the Spartan 2 program as set out in Dr. Catherine Halsey's original proposition. But since training, facilities and budget were only available for 75 of those children, the remaining 75 had to be dropped from the program. And since all 150 candidates were perfectly suited to the Spartan program, the likelihood is that they were removed from the program simply on a basis of chance. And that chance could be gleaned from something as simple as a coin toss, heads or tails. Meaning the first recorded interaction between John 117 and Dr. Catherine Halsey that just so happened to include a coin toss was possibly John being decided as to whether or not he would be in the Spartan program or out of it. It could then be argued if John's defining trait and characteristic was his luck, as identified by Cortana many years later.
You had something they didn't. Something no one saw but me. Can you guess? Luck.
then did that luck shine through with his coin toss, enabling him to get into the Spartan program in the first place? Or is it that his luck was identified at that stage, but in which case his luck was simply a 50-50, meaning he wasn't any more or any less lucky than any of the other 74 candidates that got into the program? Although the animated version of The Fall of Reach showed John correctly guessing a coin toss over and over and over again, in the original source material, the original Fall of the Reach book, it was one single coin toss, the animated version having subsequent coin tosses to illustrate John's quote-unquote lucky streak. Onwards from this, on the day that the Spartan candidates were actually told that they were going to be the quote-unquote saviours of humanity, many of the children tried to stand up and leave and were promptly forced back down into their seats. However, quite a few of them seemed resolute. John just so happened to be one of those individuals who were resolute. This entry also touches upon training and indoctrination protocols to keep the children distracted, as well as physical training headed by CPO Mendez to otherwise exhaust the children to the point that they didn't really have any time of the day left to remember or ask questions about their family and the life they had before military indoctrination. And while on the subject of indoctrination, indoctrination was deemed a very necessary part of the Spartan 2's training procedure. First and foremost, the very illegal nature in which these children were obtained for use in the Spartan program meant that they needed to somewhat train into the children an unflinching loyalty to the UNSC and the Office of Naval Intelligence. This was done by selectively choosing what truths to reveal to the children and what other truths to bend or otherwise withhold, to condition their mental state to believe the UNSC and ONI have always and will always look out for their best interests. Something similar, though quite removed from Stockholm Syndrome, a trust, sympathy or empathy for their captors. Next, it was deemed necessary because these were ultimately going to be some of humanity's most powerful warriors. The final finished product, being a Spartan 2 super soldier wearing Mjolnir-powered assault armor, is quite possibly the most devastating weapon of war ever created by humanity to that point. Indoctrination meant ensuring that the Spartans would always follow orders and always get the mission done, strongly believing that the UNSC and ONI were asking them to do whatever it was they were told to do for a greater good. This also then served the purpose of ensuring that the Spartans would never turn against the UNSC or the Office of Naval Intelligence, as a rogue Spartan would be tantamount to a nuclear-capable submarine suddenly deciding to disobey orders and go about its own actions. You just don't want to lose control of such expensive and powerful weapons. And finally, indoctrination served to highlight that the insurrectionists and the rebels were what was going to cause humanity to fall, as this was the very reason that the Spartan program was created in the first place.
Dr. Halsey, you're bending history for your own favor, and you know it. You developed the Spartans to crush human rebellion, not to fight the Covenant.
Indoctrination made sure that they never sympathized with the rebellion, and thus guaranteed that the Spartans would destroy the rebellion at all costs, without particularly sparing a thought to the motivations behind their rebellion in the first place, no matter how valid those reasons may be. On the subject of indoctrination, there probably is a very deep assessment I could do of perhaps a suggestion of certain techniques that were used in the indoctrination procedure in order to make the Spartans what they ultimately became to be. In order to do this, I'd have to do a lot of research and probably talk to some psychology experts, but if you're interested in perhaps exploring indoctrination in a more thorough sense, let me know in the comments below. And in the interests of keeping this returning episode of Classified Materials a little bit longer, we're going to splice this together with the next entry of the Halsey Journal, if nothing else, just to make this video a few minutes longer. And if I'm quite honest, I don't know about you guys, but I never get bored of hearing the younger Dr. Halsey voice that Kat is so capable of doing. So Dr. Halsey, if you would, please continue.
September 28, 2517. Candidates were given haircuts today. Number 087 disarmed the Master Sergeant barber of his clippers before 3 other attendants were able to pin her down and shave her head. Master Sergeant said he'd seen feral cats squirm less and leave fewer claw marks.
This entry highlights that after 4 days of being in the Spartan program, all of the Spartan candidates had their heads shaved, in keeping with standard conscription and enlistment protocols. This harkens back to the military training indoctrination that focuses on tearing down individuality and rebuilding team, squad, and a larger collective uniform identity. This is evidently something that runs very, very deep with the Spartans, as when they were fully grown wearing their Mjolnir armour, at least in the original written novelization of the Fall of Reach, all of the Spartans wore identical versions of Mjolnir powered assault armour, and it irritated them to their core that Dr. Halsey could identify each Spartan uniquely simply based on their walk. The fact that Kelly put up such a fight to become uniform in the first place makes this a particularly interesting turn of events. This entry also highlights, at least in brief, that Kelly's response time, even at the age of 6, was so fast that fully grown adults just couldn't keep up with her. And this also harkens back to an earlier entry in Halsey's journal where she references that Kelly managed to sprint away and evade the Oni acquisitions team when she was due to be abducted for the Spartan program, only revealing herself later on because she believed it all to be an elaborate game in preparation for her upcoming birthday. But again, it's the fact that there is an entry of this nature in her journal, rather than being focused at her work and any thought she has in regards to problems she's encountering in the development process of the tandem project she'd running at any given time. She takes the time to pay attention to the exploits of one particular individual. She takes time to have interest in the exploits of that individual. And again, because the journal isn't just filled to the brim with information about her work, this again positively reinforces this morally grey nature and the fact that Dr. Halsey is not the hardened war criminal that she's now being painted to be. And that concludes episode 13 of Classified Materials, focusing on Halsey's journal. Again, if you're new to this video series, the playlist is linked in the description down below, so be sure to get up to speed with the previous episodes, and make sure you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss upcoming content. Until next time. Thanks for watching. Stick your comments down below, and I look forward to what you have to say. And quick shout outs and thank yous to my patrons: Spartan10148, my devastatingly effective Metarch class ancilla; Silver Spartan, Leon, Ram, Prophet Bear, and Irrefutable Justice, my ever-vigilant monitors; the careful tending of Alvin, Andrew, Brian, Cameron, Darian, Devon, Phantom, Flaming Halo, Cabal, Legions Lost, Michael, Spartan0137, the Cave Potato, and Wolf Eclipse, my sub-monitors; my growing fleet of Strato Sentinels; and my most loyal of enforcers; and all my awesome Sentinels, Sentries, and Constructors who have jumped aboard on Patreon to help support the channel. You have my debt of gratitude. And, as ever, Todd Morrison, my Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube member. Thanks for keeping my installation running on that glorious vacuum energy. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, as it all helps the channel grow and helps me to continue to deliver this kind of content for you guys. And if you're ready for your next steps in evolution, head over to Patreon and become a patron there, or become a YouTube member to attain a higher state of being. Much love to all of you, take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.